what has the union, as in AFA, who we are, what have we done to help the flight attendants at Northwest Airlines? What have we done to help the flight attendants at United? And specifically, what is the retirement? We've kind of already answered that, but what have the unions done? What has AFA done to help the flight attendants at Northwest Airlines and United specifically? And I'm assuming because there's a lot of talk of merger.
Okay. Sure. I was involved in both of those negotiations, so I can speak to that, Vita. At Northwest, really the more recent case, the bankruptcy negotiations, we came in the middle of the bankruptcy. The flight attendants voted for AFA, and we came in with just 10 days to make an agreement. As defined by the judge. We had 10 days to work with, and we were able to negotiate an agreement there that had approximately $30 million in improvements over the previous bankruptcy deal that had been voted down by an 80 to 20 margin. 80% of the flight attendants voted against it. So it was still a concessionary deal. Of course, this is bankruptcy, but we improved it by about $30 million. That deal was then voted down by the members by a narrow margin. I think about 54% voted against it. So we redoubled our efforts. We went to court to stand up for the flight attendants' right to strike, and ultimately the courts ruled that you can't strike at the end of a bankruptcy. And so we went back to the bargaining table, and we were the last union holding out for better terms. And right at the very end of the bankruptcy, we made another agreement that was ultimately ratified by the members, had several $1 million in additional improvements, and an equity claim in the bankruptcy process that ultimately has yielded the flight attendants roughly $15,000 apiece to offset some of the bankruptcy concessions. So that's the kind of thing that we're able to do and bring in the resources and help the flight attendants. We went to work with a committee of flight attendants, and we brought in professional negotiators and bankruptcy lawyers and so forth to help out with that process. The United case was similar. United was in bankruptcy for 3.5 years, so it was a bit of a roller coaster ride. They went through a couple different rounds of negotiations because with the price of oil going up in the middle of the bankruptcy, their costs had to be revised, and so we went through a couple of rounds of that. And also at United, of course, as you know, United sought to terminate the pension plans, not just for the flight attendants, but for all the unions. AFA was the only union that fought that exercise. The other unions agreed to, reached agreements that included termination of their pension plans. AFA fought that in the courts all the way to the U.S. Court of Appeals when United made a deal with the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, in which essentially United agreed to terminate all 4 of its pension plans in return for and sought the cooperation of the PBGC, and in return the PBGC got a bankruptcy claim worth over $1 billion. So suddenly the agency that was supposed to protect our pensions was really looking out for its own interests and negotiating a bankruptcy claim in return for terminating those pensions for all of those United employees. We fought that, as I said, all the way to the Court of Appeals. And unfortunately, the court ruled that that was not illegal, and so now we're fighting for bankruptcy reform legislation that would make that illegal in the future. And then ultimately, at the end of that case, in addition to an equity claim that also paid several $1,000s to the flight attendants there, the last issue to be resolved was the replacement plan for the terminated pension plan, and we negotiated a defined contribution plan that was essentially double what management had initially proposed that it should be. So we feel that by, once again, being the last union to hold out and fight to the very end, we were able to improve that plan over what it would be if the union had not been there. And I guess I should point out that all of that exercise, all of that work that went into that, and the changes that we were able to make, and the ability we had as negotiators to steer the company away from concessions that had the worst impact and steer them toward things that maybe were a little easier for the flight attendants. That's an exercise that none of you at Delta even had the opportunity to have, right? All through the bankruptcy, they made whatever changes they wanted to, and all you got was a memo saying, here's what we just did. And meanwhile, your pilots obviously were in the position that we were in, which is being in there fighting day by day to make the best of a very bad situation. So that's really what the comparison comes down to for me is, are you going to have a say in those things? Are you going to be able to steer those things in ways that limit their impact? Or are you just going to be dictated to by the executives of the airline?
May I ask a follow-up question to any of the Delta flight attendants? What was your equity claim payout on average?
It averaged, well, I had enough to buy a bike.
Oh.
As in bicycle,
Bicycle,
not motorcycle.
yes.
Okay.
2 wheels, pedals, chain.
Let me just say on that, Vita. This I know people laugh, and yet there are probably people sitting
funny
at home looking at their computers thinking this isn't very funny because I took very serious concessions, and we realize that, and that's why we fought for things like I said at Northwest. Ultimately, after all the concessions, the flight attendants got an equity claim that paid $15,000 roughly. And that helped to ease the pain a little bit and make it survivable maybe for some people. So that's a really important piece.